I'm out here in the garden on this nice breezy day. We're actually supposed to get some thunderstorms this afternoon, evening, and into tomorrow. And I'm just kind of checking out the garden, and I've got some green tomatoes popping and lots of peppers popping. I'm so excited that things are starting to produce. What's produced right now, and I need to harvest and get put up, is all of my basil plants. And actually, I've got quite a few that are getting ready to seed out and flower out. So I'm actually need to get as much basil as I can right now. I kind of just pick off the flowers to buy me more time as well, and I'll discard these. But I am going to harvest some of this very ready basil, and we're going to take it into the kitchen, and I'll show you two ways that I preserve basil. Now, we like to use basil just in fresh cooking. One basil plant will give you lots and lots of basil leaves. So if you don't want to preserve any, one plant would probably do just fine for fresh cooking. But if you are like me and like to put up as much as you can, then I am going to show you how to do that, or the two ways I do that, and it doesn't involve using a canner because you cannot can basil. So I'm going to harvest a bunch of these leaves, and we're going to get them into the kitchen, and we are going to preserve them in two different ways, both very simple. Okay, we're here in my pantry, back in the house in the kitchen, and I've got quite a bit of basil here. So the first thing is super simple, and what I'm going to do is just lay out each of my leaves in a single layer line, and I'm going to dehydrate them. Once they're completely dehydrated, I'll stick them in my blender and blend it up, and I will have my dried basil to use as on my spice rack for years and years to come. Yes, basil is not very expensive from the store, but neither are seeds, and the seeds you can just keep going over and over and over again, and if you're only planting a couple plants a year, it's saving you lots of money. So I am going to dehydrate all of these, fill my tray here. I like to use my Denali canning dehydrator here. It's nice and compact. It sits here in my pantry, and I like to use it for all my dehydrating needs. So I will link that in the description. Any dehydrator work. Now, if you don't have a dehydrator, you can still do this. What I would do is I would take the whole stem of the plant, not just individual leaves like this, and I would just hang them somewhere to dry completely. It's going to take a little bit longer, but you don't need to have a dehydrator to dehydrate your own herbs. You can crumble these up once they're dried just by hand, that's fine, but I do find that you'll get a lot chunkier leaves. So if you want it to be more finer, is that even a word? More finer? If you want it to be finer, just like what you would buy dried basil from the store, then I would stick it in a blender, and that's what I do. Now the rest of these leaves, I'm not going to do all my leaves, I'm going to turn into something else to preserve, and that is some basil pesto, which is so delicious on chicken, on a pasta salad. Oh, it's just, you want to get some fresh basil pesto in your freezers to be able to use all year long. tray in here. I'm gonna shut the lid. I'm gonna set it for around 100 degrees. My Denali dehydrator here kind of has set times, and so there was 95 or 104. I'm gonna go ahead and do 104. And I set it for 7 hours. So with the Beast here, that's what this is called, this dehydrator, you can set your time and then it churns off at that time. And so I set mine for 7 hours because I want to be able to check it regularly. You don't want it to get real crispy. And so it doesn't need to run if it's already done. So I'm going to check it at 7 hours. If they're done, I'll go ahead and pull them out and we'll blend them up and get them stored in a vacuum sealed bag for later use. So let's move on to what I'm going to do with the next set of leaves that I harvested. Okay, so now we're going to take the rest of this basil and we are going to make some basil pesto. And I have these silicone cubes here. I have 2 of them. That's what I'm going to use to freeze them in. And then I can just pop them out once they're all the way frozen and put them in a Ziploc bag. And then you just defrost them when you want some pesto sauce anytime you need it. So I have 4 cups of the rest of these fresh basil here. The recipe calls for 2, but I'm gonna double this. So I have washed them and dried them, and now I'm going to put them into my food processor. If you don't have a food processor, you can do this in a blender as well. Okay, now I'm just gonna go ahead and chop these up in my food processor. And now I'm going to add in a 1/2 cup of pine nuts, which it calls for 1/4 cup, but since I'm doubling it, I'm doing a 1/2. A 1/2 cup of grated Parmesan, and same thing, it calls for 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan, but since I'm doubling it, I am putting in a 1/2 cup. And then it calls for 2 to 4 cloves of garlic. I'm putting in 8 garlic. We like lots of garlic, and it's really good for you. And then the last thing is a teaspoon of salt. The recipe calls for a 1/2 teaspoon. Since I'm doubling it, I'm doing 1 teaspoon. And I will put this recipe on the blog and I'll link it here in the description so that you can get all the correct measurements. Now I'm just going to blend this up again. Okay, so now I have everything all blended up, and now we're gonna make it into the pesto sauce that it needs to be. I have a cup of olive oil here. You can use avocado oil if you want. And while this is why it's good to do it in a food processor, because while it's going on low, I'm gonna pour it into the spout here so that it starts to make the sauce. You're gonna use, in the regular recipe, you're gonna use anywhere from 1/4 to a 1/2 cup. I went ahead and put a cup in here since I'm doubling it. And I'm not exactly sure how much because you're gonna go until you have the right consistency for you. You want it to be like a paste with a little bit of liquid to it. Okay, so here is what we got. So it's a little bit liquidy, but it's chunky, and this is perfect. You can keep blending it to try and get it even smoother, but I like it just like this. It's so good on meats, or you can do it on pasta salad. Now I'm going to go ahead and start filling my cubes. And as you can see, it doesn't make a ton. Even doubling this recipe doesn't make a ton. So I will just keep harvesting basil and keep freezing cubes to have all the time. Now, if you don't have these silicone cubes, you can also do it in some ice trays. Obviously, they're smaller. These are really thick cubes. So the smaller things you will want to, it'll only fill a little bit. And so when you go to use it on something in a recipe, you'll have to take out quite a few cubes. All right, this fills, these big old cubes only fills 4 of it. So doubling that recipe does only fill 4. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take this, stick it in my freezer, let it freeze overnight, and then I'll pop them out and I will stick them in a Ziploc bag, label that bag, and keep it in the fridge, or I'm sorry, keep it in the freezer for whenever we need it. I hope that this video was helpful in giving you 2 different ways of preserving your basil plants. Take those basil leaves and get them preserved because you don't want anything to go to waste that you grow in the garden, but also so that you can use it for fresh cooking as well all throughout the summer months. Make sure to like and subscribe to the video. I send out one new video every single week. Jump on over to the blog and put in your email address. I send out an email a week over there with different recipes and things that we're doing. I also share my YouTube video here in that email so you don't miss it. I hope this video helped you in preserving food this summer, and we will see you next time. Take care.